What's a creepy real-life story that still leaves you feeling really scared?
This is a story about a friend of my acquaintance who met some guy at a bar. He invited her over to have a drink, and she went. After spending some time at his place, she began to feel unwell and, apologizing, went to the bathroom. There, she immediately called emergency services, gave them the address, and didn't even manage to finish speaking before she lost consciousness. The operator realized something was wrong and sent the police and, I think, firefighters to the location. They broke down the door, put a bag over the girl's head, and carried her outside. As they were carrying her, she began to regain consciousness, still with the bag over her head. A few weeks later, she started seeing a psychologist because she couldn't recover from the trauma. After everything that happened, what bothered her the most was that the police put a bag over her head. What was in that house that she wasn't allowed to see? The police didn't want to explain anything until the psychologist insisted they reveal the whole truth, saying it was important for the patient's recovery. And then the police told everything. When they broke into the house, it turned out that the entire place, from floor to ceiling, was covered in plastic sheeting. In the center of the living room stood a table with restraints for securing a person and a whole collection of knives and torture tools. The man had slipped something into her drink, planning to torture her for a long time and then, most likely, kill her. The worst part is that he was barely punished. He was only convicted for poisoning. After that, the girl was forced to continue living in the same city as him. And soon after, I heard a very similar story from a neighboring country about 4 hours away. And ever since then, I keep wondering whether these two cases were somehow connected.
This is the story of a kid who set a homeless man on fire. It happened in Serbia, and it has always broken my heart. Before the murder, the victim had been interviewed, and he said, "Life led me here. After the bombing started, I went bankrupt, and my marriage fell apart. Then I started drinking, ended up on the street, wandering wherever I could, until I eventually became fully homeless." For me, it's just a story, because I don't remember any of it. But many years ago, I had a series of episodes with night terrors. My family said I screamed so loudly that I woke up the neighbors. One night, I came to when my then boyfriend shouted, "Wake up!" and at the same time tackled me to the floor. The balcony doors were open, and I was already halfway outside. When we calmed down a little, he started crying. According to him, the whole thing looked like a scene from a horror movie. He woke up to me jumping to my feet with a completely blank expression on my face. Then I started breathing heavily, and then I screamed like a banshee. I rushed to the balcony door, flung it open, and had already swung one leg over the railing, still screaming. He grabbed me at the last second. Afterwards, he said he had never heard anything like that before and hoped he never would again. After that, it took me years to feel ready to live alone again. I'm still afraid that one day I'll wake up already in the middle of a fall.
Still watching this episode? Then don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
A woman who worked in a government laboratory and served in CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, suddenly became very ill at work. She was taken to the hospital by a military ambulance. At the hospital, she admitted that she had decided to take her own life and had ingested a certain substance. However, it worked more slowly than she expected. She confessed that the substance came from the secret lab where she worked, but refused to tell the doctors exactly what she had taken. CSIS personnel escorted her to the hospital. Reportedly, due to the classified nature of her work, they told the doctors that they could not disclose what substance she might have ingested, although they admitted that the laboratory records surely contained that information. However, they cited national security concerns and refused to cooperate with the hospital staff. The woman was moved to a private room and military guards were stationed at the door. Neither her parents nor her husband were allowed to see her. She spent several hours dying, never saying what exactly she had swallowed, only repeating that no one else would be harmed by it. I didn't know her personally, but my colleague had been friends with her since university. Her husband called him asking for legal help. He wanted to gain the right to see his wife. My colleague didn't have the right specialization, so he referred him to another lawyer. As far as I understand, the husband and family were never allowed to see her. They say the government took her body and cremated it at an undisclosed facility. The ashes were not returned to the family, and they never learned what happened to her. If I'm not mistaken, this happened around 87. It sounds unbelievable, but I remember the day my colleague got the call from her husband. He was completely shaken, both by the fact that she had taken her own life and that she had violated laboratory and service protocols. He said she was the most level-headed, law-abiding, and principled person he had ever known. He couldn't believe that the woman he had gone to school with could deliberately break the rules, let alone steal and ingest an unknown substance. In the early 80s, my father was dating a woman and lived with her for a while. They eventually broke up, according to him, because she drank heavily. Years later, in the late 90s, a horrible tragedy happened to her. She was found at the end of a driveway with an explosive device that had detonated inside her. The most disturbing detail is that when she was discovered, she was still alive. The police came to our house and questioned my father, asking if he knew anything. He told them that he believed it was probably connected to some man she had met at a bar that night, considering how heavily she drank. The perpetrator was never found. At the time, I was around 15, and I didn't believe the story for a long while. But years later, a news article and a documentary about the case came out. I had a friend on Facebook whom I'd been talking to for a few years. The guy was awesome. One morning, he posted about a nightmare he had. So I'm sitting with a few people, we're drinking and talking. At some point, we feel a slight tremor, and a second later, the power goes out. Everything goes dark. We go outside, and the whole neighborhood is completely blacked out. We keep drinking a couple more rounds and wait for the electricity to come back. I notice a strange orange glow on the horizon. It doesn't look like a sunset or sunrise. It starts getting hot. In the distance, you can hear sirens. There's no phone signal. No one understands what's going on, and we're starting to worry. The heat and the glow get stronger. We're standing outside when we suddenly see the first people running toward us, burned, bloody, panicking. Just screams and cries of terror. For a moment, we all freeze in shock, unable to comprehend the massive wall of fire rolling toward us and swallowing the fleeing people one by one. The screams snap us out of it, and suddenly I'm alone. Everyone else scatters like a school of fish escaping danger. I realize I'm doomed and try to run, but it's pointless. People rush past me, and I can feel the heat growing stronger as I desperately look for shelter. The warmth feels like a gigantic blowtorch trying to ignite me. I'm thinking about how painful it is to die. Flames flare up nearby. I feel unbearable pain. I hope it ends quickly. I'm burning. I'm terrified. And then I wake up. Lately, I've been having nightmares like this. It seems the pain in my back seeps into my dreams and creates these hellish scenarios. I need coffee and therapy to process this. The next night, after he posted that, a fire broke out in his room, and he died. It's been 7 years, and this still sends chills down my spine. A ghost story. It can be confirmed by both of my brothers, my mom, and my stepdad. We all experienced this together. When I was little, around 6 to 8 years old, we lived in a very old and creepy 2-story house. It was so big that my stepdad's friends lived with us, like housemates. My room was upstairs to the left of the staircase, and it had no door. My brother's room was across from mine. The staircase itself had doors, one at the bottom and one at the top. Every night when I went upstairs to sleep, I closed both of them. It made me feel safer. I was an anxious kid. The previous owner of the house was our cousin Errol, who had taken his own life right there in the house, in my room. My family only told me this when I got older. And then everything made sense. He had hanged himself right above the spot where I slept every night. Every night, from around 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., we all heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs, even though the bottom door was always closed. The footsteps would reach the top, walk into my room, and then the whole thing would start over, from the very bottom again. It was terrifying. Even now, writing this, I feel that same cold gut punch dread. Every night, throughout my whole childhood, I heard those footsteps. My brothers heard them too, as did my mom and stepdad. And my younger brother said he saw people in the house at night, which was even scarier. We think he was more sensitive to that kind of thing. One night, out of curiosity, I opened the door at the top of the stairs and turned on the light to see who was coming up. There was no one there, and the footsteps stopped. As soon as the light came on, I bolted back to my bed and hid under the covers. And then the footsteps started again downstairs. It got to the point where my mom, when the ghost was especially active, would yell, "Errol, go to bed." And strangely enough, the footsteps really would stop. Ever since then, our whole family has had a mix of fear and a sort of respect toward ghosts and the afterlife. We all lived through this. Later, the house was burned down in a controlled fire to make space for a new housing development. I went to the site afterward and took a couple of charred bricks as a keepsake. After what I experienced in that house, I'll believe in ghosts for the rest of my life. One of my dad's friends had a younger brother. One day they went on a trip, and the brother went missing. They didn't find him until many years later, dead at the bottom of a well. My dad found out when his friend called him in a panic, asking for help getting more influential police involved or organizing a search. Since my dad had previously worked in a field related to law enforcement, he watched his friend's family slowly fall apart while the brother remained missing. On the day the body was finally found, my dad talked with him for a long time about life and death. The scariest part is how he ended up there. It happened at night. The guy was a bit drunk and apparently just didn't see the well and fell into it. I hope he died instantly. It's terrifying to imagine that he might have survived the fall and been trapped at the bottom. Not as creepy a story as some others, but I'll tell it anyway. When I was about 9, our neighbor and his wife threw a barbecue and invited their relatives and friends. We were very close with them. Their family was almost like part of ours. The neighbor's wife was the aunt of my best friend. Let's call him D. I don't remember all the details of that evening, but D and I were swimming in the pool, eating, just hanging out. At some point, I decided to go home and lie down with the lights on. At that time, I slept in the attic, and to get there, you had to climb a ladder. I lay there for a bit when suddenly Dee's mom walked into the room. Nothing strange, they came over often. She asked why I was lying down since the party wasn't over yet. Then she immediately left. I thought she was right, got off the bed and headed to the back door to go outside. That door was next to my parents' bedroom, which was always open. I tried to open the back door, but it was locked. I rattled the handle, and my mom sat up in bed and asked where I was going. I said, Dee's mom told me to go back to the party. To which my mom replied, Dee and his family left several hours ago. Turns out it was already midnight. Everyone had gone home long ago. I don't know what that was, a hallucination or a dream, but I had no sense of transitioning between sleep and being awake. I clearly heard her voice and saw her. I still get chills thinking about what could have happened to me, a 9-year-old kid near that dark pool, if I had actually gone outside. What was that? Someone or something trying to lure me out?